My name is Steve. I've been with EdgeTech for 10 years now, working with different projects. I've been part of this project for the last 5 years. So I'm just teaming up with the different entities, working with DPI assessment team and the different vendors that are, we use for the testing for the last 5 years. On the next slide, you'll just see kind of a overview. You'll only really need access to the chat and the mic when I open those mics up for comment or whatever at the end of the presentation. But again, if you just reference that, kind of gives you an explanation of those two features. And then also with me today is Jess Berkey. She is from Northwood. She has been with us with EdgeTech for 7 months. She was a tech coordinator, teacher, all that stuff in Northwood for 10 years. She previously worked for the Department of Education in South Dakota, so 8 years with that. So has a lot of different experiences with different processes and tech coordinator side and all that good stuff. So a great reference to have. And then Kara Welk is also with us online from the DPI assessment team. And she, again, will be answering questions. We've been doing this the last few weeks here. And again, as we go, we kind of learn more and more about the questions you guys are asking and getting answers to when you need them. So hopefully we can get those posted in the chat when you have questions. And I believe there's some other folks online from Pearson that might be adding to things. And then and there might be a couple other people on, but I'll have more contact information for you at the end of the presentation on reaching out by email to those other folks. So today we are going to go through all kinds of different pieces about the new process for testing. We're going to go through all the different resources on the portal, all the different documents and things you'll need for the testing process. We're going to go through user roles and responsibilities. So we'll talk about who has access, who doesn't necessarily need accounts in the system, and those types of situations. We'll also go through the different systems used for testing. If you've been using some of the interim assessments through DPI last year or this year, the systems are the same as far as the delivery system and the test management system. So you will see some familiarities with those, but again, there'll be some more specific stuff to the summit of you might not know at this time. So you might get some information on those and then kind of a time to review some stuff. But if you don't have experience with the systems, you'll learn how to use those and how to manage all the different things you need to get ready for testing. You also kind of see the process of how to set up and proctor a test session, go through the steps in each phase of testing before, during, and after, and kind of what processes should be happening, tasks that are completed during those different phases. And then we'll go through all the, like I said, the resources specifically for the NDA Plus summative assessment. We're going to start off with some general information before we get into some more specific detailed stuff. But again, the testing window, you'll have March 17th to May 9th to complete the testing and all the different pieces. For grades 3 through 8 and 10, they will test on the reading, writing, which are the ELA, and then the math. And then great addition to that, 4, 8, and 10 will also test with science. There is no specific order in which those can be administered. Since this is a new process for testing, we don't have, much data to go on as far as how long it's going to take students. Keep in mind, it is not a time test, so you do have, they can take as many sessions as necessary to complete the different tests. But the design is similar to the NDSA over the past, several years that we've been working with that. So on the next slide on 8 is that schedule used from last year's resources. After this year is complete, we'll have more data on if we need to, adjust these times. For scheduling purposes, you can kind of use this as a guide. Students, in order for them to be ready to, know where to find the different supports and universal tools that are embedded within the test, the SRT, the Student Readiness Tool, is a great walkthrough of all those different tools give them some experience with some of those, where to find them on the screen, where they'll be located, how to use them, all that stuff. It's a great tool for them to use to just get used to where those are located and how to access them. And then there are also practice tests. Each test is available. They are science and reading and math for each grade level. They are 5 questions per practice test. They aren't graded or anything like that, but it gives you a great idea of the structure of the types of questions they will receive on the various tests. As you know from previous testing, there might be several pieces to one, one reading passage, or if you're answering questions, several questions related to one passage, and there might be various answer types, if you will. So again, it just gives a good overview of the structure and how to, function within the test. This year, those test scores won't be available until mid to late September for this first year of testing. So accountability is pushed back. Just keep that in mind. After this year, the test scores should be available in near real time as students complete the tests for starting next year. After they have all of the standard writing and deviation scores and all that stuff, they will be able to be recorded in near real time starting next year. And we will look at the system where those reports will be available and who has access to those shortly. In certain situations, students may have exemptions from testing. If they have a severe medical condition, a parent opted them out of the test, they have an IEP that designates a alternative assessment, or students that have not been in the country for more than a year. Those would be examples of exemptions. Their use, or this, you can code these. There has to be a code associated with these students. They have to be accounted for somehow within the system. But they're non-participation codes, and we'll go through all that when I get into the Atom system, can be entered at any time. So there isn't a window for those like there used to be in previous years of testing. Those can be entered at any time. All pieces of the test require headphones, so students will have speech to text, or text to speech, sorry, text to speech available on, questions, the answer choices. It will read all of that, and that's like I said, a tool that's going to be on and available to all students. It will read the directions to all students in the reading assessment. However, if it's an accommodation of the items or passages, that would, if a student has an accommodation that requires the passages or items to be read, that's a separate setting that they would need, or they would get if it wasn't on their IEP. But again, headphones for all the different pieces and the different tests for all grade levels. The new portal for this year is on slide 14, link there. You will find all kinds of different resources on this portal. On the home page of the portal, and again, we'll be going out there and kind of exploring as we go here, but this is just an overview of each of the different tabs of the portal. You'll find on the home page, there's kind of a video explaining how the various tests piece together. And then there's also a login to the various systems. So this is going to be very important. You bookmark this website because you're going to come back here quite often to manage pieces in the Atom system, and where proctors will go to proctor a test. Also, the tech setup page, that's going to have specs on any of the system requirements, system guidelines for the different operating systems, and the compatibility requirements for download or putting the TestNav application on the devices. The TestNav application is what the students will use to take the test. And you'll also find some user guides, very helpful user guides on how to install that or push it out from your management systems to your devices. But all student devices must have that app. Administration resources, under that tab, when you click the drop down in the middle of the top of the page there, it'll give you 2 options: interim resources or summative resources. For the summative, we obviously want to make sure we're on the summative page. That's where you'll find the test administration manual, which is your one-stop shop for anything you need to know about the testing. This will have all of the policies, procedures, scripts for directions, how to do all these different things that I'm going to demo today on kind of more further information on those. There's also going to be test blueprints and also the ELA and math achievement proficiency level descriptions will also be a document that you can have access to on that page. The training tab on the top there, that's nothing that we're going to worry about today. That's more closely related to the pieces, the interim pieces of the test, the tests that you can use if you have or haven't. But again, we're not going to focus on anything you need for the summative will be on the page that I displayed before this one. The practice test page, that's going to have, like I said, each practice test for each grade levels assessment. There's 5 questions per test. It gives them a great idea of the structure of the types of questions they will experience on the summative test. And then the Navi page, that's also something that we will not be exploring during this workshop. That's a formative assessment tool for if you're using the interim assessments. So again, if you want more information on that, or if you want to start using the interim assessments, please reach out to DPI for further information. Okay, so the different systems used for test delivery and management, okay? There's a few, couple things that we have to get used to. So the various systems are these 3 kind of main ones here: Launchpad, Atom, and Navi. Again, we're not going to work much with the Navi system or at all for that matter. We're going to focus on the Launchpad and Atom systems. Launchpad is your single sign-on. So if you have access to these systems, you will always sign in to Launchpad first, and then you will link to any other system you have access to in your Launchpad dashboard. One of those, the main system you will have access to if you do have an account, will be the Atom system. Okay, and that's where you're going to manage all of the pieces to the test. So users, students, or students are going to be able to make accommodation edits, these types of tasks. And we're going to go through each one of these and how to complete those when I'm demoing live in the Atom system. Okay, so all of those different things. A few specifics on the tech piece, that setting up the tech with your devices at your schools. Like I had mentioned, the test nav is the application that will be used on all student testing devices in order for the students to take the summative assessment. This must be installed on all testing devices. We'll go look at this setup page in just a little bit here on the portal, but there's a link there on the slide 27 for that setup page. The test, there is an app check that we highly recommend that you run prior to students logging into the application. It takes a few seconds. It can be done by students or technical support, however you kind of decide to do that. It's a simple drop-down app check. If you do receive an error after this app check, there's a place where you can reference to see how to proceed on correcting that error. I'll show you where those error codes are on the test nav setup page. But again, it only takes a few seconds, and just to make sure that everything is compatible and ready to go before students start logging in, so you don't have to come back and come back out and fix it and have them re-log in and all that fun stuff that comes with it. The tech requirements for the different pieces, the Atom system where you go in and make these edits, set up or view students, all that stuff, create Proctor groups. The Atom system where you do all of that pretty much just requires an up-to-date browser for you to log in and do those functions, where the test nav applications have a few more requirements that you're going to have to make sure if there's certain things that you need to disable or turn off, a few more things you have to cross-reference for that test nav to be compatible with your different systems. Also, there is a best practices document that kind of goes through the tech setup and the different things you want to ensure that you complete before you before students start using the browser. Okay. The device checks. If there's any questions about configuration on your network, if you have bandwidth issues or anything like that, we can check requirements on a support or on the resources for the test nav setup, and I'll show you where those are when we look at that. But we also want to make sure that we're aware of all the different, if you're running, whether you're running Chromebooks, Mac, Windows machines, iPads, just make sure you have the correct documents that you can reference for the compatibility for the systems on the different operating systems. Okay, and there's also a bunch of support that you can have from Pearson. We'll go through on that best practices document. It will have a nice outline of who to contact with the different types of questions, whether it's related to the different systems or more related to test security or test policy. That would be more of a DPI question. So there's a document that organizes that and kind of classifies on who to send the different types of questions to. Management, if there's any management software, like Land School, if a student or if a teacher can view students' screens on their devices, monitoring software like that, you want to make sure that that's disabled or turned off during testing. That could interfere with the secure browser, the test application. You also want to make sure that all software applications are closed. As we know from previous years, if you have all kinds of different, if students have all kinds of different things open before they launch, or when they launch it, it will, force that shutdown, students to shut those programs down before they launch the browser, the secure test browser. Any automatic application launching, or if there's anything running in the background, that may not be visible on a device, make sure those are turned off. Just anything that's going to disrupt the browser from operating or interrupting testing and causing it to shut down or something like that. Okay, I'm going to jump out to the portal and we're going to go to a few specifics on the support page. I'm going to bring over a window over here and go to the portal. Okay, so on the home page of the portal, like I said, there's those different systems to log into. We'll go into each one of those and demo some stuff in there. But the tech setup page, this second tab on the top, if we click on that, you will find technology resources. You'll find the test nav download. So if you did need to put it on a flash drive or something and install it on each machine that way, you could download it there. The tech guidelines is going to be for the different systems. Like I said, Atom, there might, probably just an updated browser would be necessary to go in and do test management activities in Atom. Excuse me. And then the test nav, like I said, the system requirements for the secure browser they will be using. If you click on those test nav system requirements, there's all kinds of pieces on this page that will help you with any issues when installing the browser. You can see resolution, screen size, stuff like that. External keyboards, any information on using external mouse. If you scroll down a little further, there's going to be the cutoffs for the operating systems. Chrome is always one that's kind of those that are using Chromebooks with those frequent updates from Google, wondering what's going to be supported, and stuff like that. Minimums for the stable channel and the long-term support LTS are 124 and 120. With the different iPad, Mac, OS, Windows, just those cutoffs on the different versions for the operating systems. But if you scroll down now to the beta testing, it says Chrome OS 133 is in beta. That will be ready to go by test time. So we can go up to 133 with our Chrome version. It's recommended that you turn off auto updates during testing, just in case there is a release and it forces update. It's gonna, obviously cause a problem with the browser, the secure browser. But biggest thing with that is to not forget to turn them back on after testing. Okay. Because it's a lot easier to just turn it off and not have to worry about it than trying to go back in versions. Okay, as a lot of you probably already know. If there's any updates you can find on this TestNav app updates, just any general information about specifics per, like you can see here, after the updated version is released, yeah, the next time it's launched. So they're not going to push any version updates to the TestNav application during testing. It all happens during times where there won't be any testing. So there's nothing to worry about. If you have installed it with the interim assessments, that is the same browser. You won't have to update it or anything. But again, they don't push out updates during testing that you have to worry about with those. The network requirements and guidelines on the left here, you'll see ports, that need to be open. You'll see white lists. There's a couple things I'll talk about a little bit later, but there's some speech to text accommodation has a few things we want to look for. But again, I'll explain more of that later. But if there's information about if it's blocking any part of that, we can look at URLs for those and so on. But again, just a great way to just make sure everything's, if you are struggling to cross with your network, causing problems with the browser, you can reference this page for troubleshooting. Okay. There's also a troubleshooting section here on the left. So like I had mentioned, if you get an error code on the app check or any other error code from TestNav, this would have the error code definitions and then kind of how to proceed, like app check error messages right here. If I click on that, you will see, the different types and then how to proceed to kind of fix those different problems. Okay. The recently updated area over here on the left, at the very bottom of the HTML menu, you will see recently updated. So if there's any announcements about anything related to TestNav or tools within TestNav, it will be here. So it keeps a log of those updates and announcements and so on. Something you might want to reference to if something changes and you notice something different. This would be the first place to check to see if something got changed or something with the browser. But again, you're not going to see any updates during testing. So that's a good place to start when you're setting it up. And if you're having issues, troubleshooting those issues, making sure all those settings are correct. Also on the technology resources page on the portal, over on the user guides side here, the best practices document, in which I had mentioned briefly from before, you will see all of on the top of the page. Keep scrolling here. This is where you'll find some information for the call center, their hours, telephone number. There will be some, there's also some links on the portal. I'll show you where those contacts are, but this would be also contact information for the assessment team at DPI, support specialists, all that. And then, so you keep going down in this document, you'll see the tech setup, links for the setting up the browser and the different, with the different pieces. Just kind of a checklist of all this, of all these tasks that take place for setting up the tech. Even though it says on the top here, interim assessments, it still does apply to the setup of the browser for the summative. But again, this would be a great checklist to make sure all of those specific tasks have been completed prior to setup of the app. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back one more time to the home or the tech setup page, and I'm going to go down to kind of some of the specific setup on the different types of devices. So using TestNav on a Chromebook, you can see if I click on that, then you come to a page where it has all the different systems here. But again, if there's how to push it out through your admin console, all that stuff, how to do that from the kiosk, you can see how to push it out in kiosk mode, all that. All those processes are right here, step by step on how to complete these different. And you can see the app check, which I briefly mentioned before, how to do that. And which I'll demo that too. Okay. And then the iPad, obviously, there'll be some things that you want to pay attention to. If Siri, I've heard Siri might be, you want to make sure that's disabled. That's has been one I've heard that can cause a disruption if you forget to disable that on the iPads or different Mac or whatever it is you're using. But you want to make sure that you pay attention to any of these specs for the iPad for installing the browser. And again, no matter what system you are installing it on, we want to make sure we run that app check prior to them logging in and testing. Okay. So specifics on each operating system, how to push the app out and run these different checks prior to testing. Okay, so if you again, if you have any more questions on that, don't hesitate to put in the chat. I didn't go through a lot of it, but just to where to find those different pieces. Okay, I'm going to close out a few of these. Go back to the slideshow here. Okay. Moving on to slide 32. We're going to go through user roles and responsibilities. And again, you'll find these on pages 12 to 14 in the TAM, the Test Administration Manual. There's 4 kind of main roles, stakeholders in the process of the testing process. The proctor will be the individual that is in the classroom while students are testing. They'll have a dashboard on their screen in which it will show the students and different progress they're making and different things that you have to pay attention to. Again, we'll go over all of those. But again, the difference with this system is that proctors do not need to have an account in any of the systems to proctor a test. Okay, if you remember in previous years, we had to assign a role to a test administrator, and then they would be able to administer tests that way. This, you do not. You simply need a test code and a proctor password, which comes from a school or school admin or a district admin. And again, we'll go through all the processes on creating proctor groups and where those codes and passwords come from and all that, and where they log in, all those ins and outs we'll go through. But again, a proctor does not need an account in any of these systems to proctor a test. A teacher has access to a dashboard when they log, if they have access and when they log in. But they can also proctor a test to their own classroom in this dashboard also, in addition to accessing class and individual student reports. Also different with this is you do not have to assign a roster to a teacher in order for them to view reports. This system recognizes teachers and the class or the students in that teacher's class. So those reports are just automatically assigned to those teachers. So we don't have to go through the process of assigning rosters to a teacher and all that stuff we had to do in the past. So I think that's a really nice feature that we will appreciate. The school admin role is going to be the one of those folks that will go into Adam. They will go through, looking up users, editing student accommodations, making non-participation code changes, making reports of if there's test irregularity, if there's something that needs to be reset, all those things, functions within Adam that can be done, that need to be done at certain times throughout testing as they arise, can be done by a school admin or a district admin. Really the only difference between those two roles is the kind of view they have. School is more local, each school individually, and then district would have access to all schools within the district. Proctor groups is another important piece of all that, which we will go into in depth shortly. So the district admin, like I said, the kind of overseer of the testing at the district level, needs to make sure or by default, this role is assigned to the superintendent. But they need to make sure that the school coordinators are aware of the resources they need to have, where they access resources for training proctors. We'll go through that process shortly. And also make sure they the folks that they're responsible for and coordinating also receive those proper training materials or uh, documents that they need to go over for who are involved with the testing. The school coordinator, school admin, by default, this is assigned to the principal or each building level principal. However, it can be all kinds of different folks. It can be a vice principal, tech coordinator, counselor, other staff member, whoever is responsible for going in and completing all of these different tasks within the ADAM system should have access as a school admin. And we'll talk about can't create additional users in a couple slides here. The school admin, school coordinator, obviously, one thing I forgot to mention is if at all possible, you want to make sure the school coordinator is, if at all possible, somebody with non-instructional or limited instructional duties, just so they have that focus on managing things during the testing process. There's just things that could come up and they will make sure they're available to handle these different items. So some of those items will be overseeing test session management. Like I said, if something happens to a test, a student, and it needs to have a request made for restarting it or resetting it, making sure that they're doing those tasks because the school coordinator can do those types of things. Also, some of the post-test activities, putting those non-participation codes in, accessing on-demand reports, whether that be progress reports. So if they want to look at progress of the different tests, where percentages by class or school, kind of where they're at on the different tests or tests as a whole, seeing where they're at and how much time is left with those or percentages left with those types of items that they need to oversee and coordinate during the testing process. The school coordinator or district administrator, or any role for that matter, does not have access to create new users at your level, at your district school levels. So if you need additional roles assigned, school admin or district admin, you need to request those through the assessment team at Department of Public Instruction. And that would be Kara or Stan, and their information for contact is going to be at the end of this presentation, but this is the information they would need in order to create those new roles. Okay, so again, they just need this information and then they'll be able to create the role. If you need others that need access to those systems, make sure you request those through them. If you have quite a few that you need to add, you might want to consider creating a spreadsheet and sending it that way with these columns and the bullet points. Okay, so something to keep in mind there. The proctor role, like I said, a proctor does not need to log in to proctor a test. What they need is the test code and a proctor password, which comes from a school coordinator or district administrator as they are creating groups for the proctors. Okay. There's all kinds of folks in your district's schools that might be acting as these proctors, as we know. Paras, substitute teachers, student teachers, just whoever is part of that process and actually in the classroom as the students are testing and responsible for those different items that are happening during that testing. Obviously we don't want volunteers or high school students acting as testing proctors. Some of the items that proctor, will be part of or active in will be that first one we'll talk a little bit later. If a student does have an accommodation of a print paper test, there will be a way for them to actually have the test provided to them on paper. But again, we're not 100% sure on how that's going to be distributed or printed. we'll have more information on that soon. But again, the proctor might be the one that would print that. We're not sure yet. Printing and distributing testing tickets, student test tickets. Again, you'll see as we start creating proctor groups of how you're going to handle that beforehand, or whoever creates the groups, that just, it'll fall into place when you see how these are done and how you set things up at your schools. Making sure students are logging into TestNav correctly. A lot of times they'll put an extra number in the SSID or eliminate and not put enough numbers in, just helping them with that if they're having issues with that. Any proctor management activities, anything that appears in the dashboard that you need to address as testing is happening. Obviously, making sure students are progressing, they're not just sitting there idle for the whole time, stuff like that. And then making sure they log out of TestNav at the end of a session. That's a very important step. Okay, because if there's a chance it could sit idle. And if they're done with the test, it won't say that submitted. Even if they did submit it and didn't close out, it might remain idle in progress status. So we want to make sure that we're logging out. They're logging out every time after a testing session of the application. There's also going to be some items that a proctor will have to, collect. They'll have to collect scratch paper, destroy that scratch paper. Obviously, we don't want stuff with answers on it or samples of things that others would have access to. Excuse me. So just items that kind of come along with all those different pieces to that. So like I had mentioned before, there are some documents that each proctor needs to kind of go through and make sure they have aware of procedures, all that stuff, how to do this proctoring. But so basically, this is different than previous years where a teacher, a role would have to go in and take a online or, digital test, if you will, on proctor test administration, and they wouldn't be able to administer a test until that had been completed. This year, it can be more of a staff effort where you can have a staff meeting and that proctor certification PowerPoint, you could go through that together. Also, there's a proctor training course. There is some differences between those. One is a little more procedural policy. The other one is more, how to retrieve where to input the proctor password, proctor test code, what to display, the proctor dashboard. So they should go through both of them. The proctor certification PowerPoint takes about 20 minutes. The proctor training course about 5 to 10 minutes. So looking at about a half hour, which was similar to that test administrator certification course in the past. But again, you also want to make sure they know, obviously where the portal is, how to log into a dashboard or start proctoring a test. Also, they want to make sure that they go through the test administration manual and be aware of the student readiness tool and the practice test. Once you have all of your proctors kind of ready to go and they've received all these resources, districts should complete an assurance form, which is in that first bullet point each year. So you don't have to necessarily submit a official list of people or anything like that to DPI, but you should keep a record of who check off list of everybody that received it. It should be all proctors, obviously, but anybody who received this stuff, these resources, and also how you went about it. If you did it as staff, if you did it individually, or however it was conducted. So just in case there is an audit. But again, that doesn't have to necessarily be sent to DPI or anything like that. Okay. The teacher role in the Adams system, like I said, teachers will have access to students' performance results when those become available. We talked about when those will this year and next year and all that stuff. But again, those core teachers, math, English, science teachers, should have an account in the Atom system already. Okay, if there's other teachers that need access to reports, let's say you have a special education teacher that would, has, might have students from first grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, all kinds of different grade levels, not necessarily the entire class, but different students at different grade levels. We would either have to provide those reports to them from a school coordinator or a district administrator, or you would have to give them a role in the Atom system. But just keep in mind with that, they would have access to all of them. They would have to go in each one and kind of choose and pick their students out of it. But again, there's kind of a all or nothing with that. Where I mean, if you feel comfortable with that, totally give them a role, or you can provide that to them. Again, just some different scenarios you might come across. The teacher also has the ability to proctor a test through their own dashboard in Atom. So that's a little bit different than a proctor without an account proctoring it. We'll go through each way in the live side of Atom. The tech coordinator is your other person that's going to be an important part of the process. If there's, again, just being available, making sure, that they're keeping an eye on things as testing is going. If there's anything that comes up, if, the network's having issues or something, they communicate that there might be issues, or if there's just something going on, making sure if there is a known time during the day that there's heavy traffic on the network, just notifying people that let's back off on that a little bit as we're testing, so we have plenty of bandwidth for the testing devices. Just communication process like that, and then being able to troubleshoot as things come up, being available. Okay, and where to find those resources for solving these different issues, like I showed you on the setup and support page for tech. 44 there is a chart that has each role kind of in what access they have, what types of tasks they can complete. Again, those create user accounts, that has to be done at the state level. Ensure, technical readiness, that'll be your overall seer of everything, just making sure everything's ready, ensuring that it is ready. Install software, test nav, all that stuff. Just all those different pieces that are being put into place and who has access to what. This chart outlines all of those different processes. Most of these you're going to see live and how those are completed in the Atom system when we dive into that. Okay, but at this time, this next slide, we're going to take about a 10 or 15-minute break. And during that break, I want to make sure that if you've never accessed the system, and we want to make sure that you have an account. And if you don't, then we need to try to get that resolved. But if you've never had an account before, and we create one, if we do get to creating you one today, you won't have access to the Atom system until tomorrow. So but on the slides coming up, I do have a lot of screenshots. But again, in order for you to follow along, if you wanted to, we want to make sure you have an account. The instructions on this slide kind of show you how to check that. If not, post in the chat and we will help you out. But let's take a break until 5 after 2. So 2:05. I'll edit this slide in the background. But anyway, let's make sure you communicate that and make sure you can log into the Atom system or the Launchpad, log into Launchpad, and then link to the Atom LTR system from there. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera for a little bit and help answer questions if necessary, but 2:05 will come back and keep moving. Some things, or when I go into the Atom system, I'm going to go through all of these different tasks in there on slide 46. Before we do that, I want to kind of verbally explain the options for proctor groups. again, we'll go in and do them, but before we get into that. Proctor group creation, there are 3 options for completing this task. And every test card has to have proctor groups created in order to administer the test. So the first scenario would be the school coordinator creating these proctor groups ahead of time, adding students to the proctor groups, and then distributing the proctor password and test code to the proctors to go in and proctor the test. Okay, so in this case, if you do it where you pre-populate the groups with students, when you print the test tickets after that, the test code should show up on the test ticket. Okay, again, doesn't have to be that way. The proctor will always have the test code to display on the screen or the board or whatever. But again, if you want it set up to where you want the test code to show up on the test tickets that the students need to log in, you could do it this way. Second option is have the proctors create the proctor groups. The school coordinator would, or district administrator, whoever's creating these proctor groups, would still go to the test card and go to proctor groups, but it's a different set of test code and password they would give the proctors. And then when the proctors go and enter that and have the students log in, the students logging in will populate the group as they're coming in. So students are assigned as they're logging in, not pre-added like in the first option. And in the last option, the teacher would log into Launchpad, or they'd log into Launchpad, be brought to Atom. In their dashboard, they would see their grade levels and their classes. And then they would click on one of those classes or class cards or whatever, open it up and choose to proctor that. And they would be brought to the Proctor dashboard to proctor to their own class. And then they would get students a code, and then students would start logging in and appearing in the list for the group as they're logging in. That might not make much sense to you right now, but we're going to go in and do this all within the system. And again, I'm going to cover all of these processes from slide 46 as we're in the system doing all these different tasks. But on slides 50 to like 70 some, the sole intent of those were to provide you screenshot by screenshot of everything I'm going to do, of all the proctor group creation options. So if you want to come back, if you're like, oh, you went through it, great, but I need that visual again, feel free to come back here. There's also some stuff in the TAM and the appendix of the TAM that will help you with these also. But again, this is meant for a resource if you want that visual of each step in creating these proctor groups. Okay. 52, again, 52 through like 70 some, I can't think 72 or something like that, is all the visuals of all the different options. I am going to jump out to the live side. So I'm going to go out to the portal. Okay, so currently you should see on your screen of me sharing the portal. I'm going to go to the home page of the portal. Okay, and then again, this is the school coordinator, option 1, the school coordinator creating the groups and assigning students to the groups. So I, the school coordinator, am going to go to Launchpad, sign in. Okay, I'm going to sign in. Again, once you sign in the Launchpad, you will see a link or a tile to get to the Atom LTR system. Okay, I'm going to click on that. And now I'm in the Atom system. Okay. You will find the summative test cards under the test management administrations. Okay, so once you click on test management administrations, currently, I believe that you see probably interim assessments on the first few pages, however many you have. You will see those either way, whether you've used them or not. These should be moving over to this past area soon, I think. If anybody wants to chime in the chat on that, go ahead. But anyway, the interim or the summative assessment cards, you're either going to have to scroll ahead to the cards that you find them on, or you can go up to date created up here and click on the drop down and click date created newest. I think, okay. Yeah, date created newest. Yep, I had to think that over again. There we go. Again, mine's going to look different just because I have some kind of varying data with my demoing information. But if you click on newest, you should, I believe, see the summative cards. There is an issue right now with the writing test cards. They're working on fixing that. So you should see though all of the math and the reading and science cards. Of course, the science will only show up in 4, 8, and 10. But again, you should see those ones. So the school coordinator, I'm going to go to Proctor groups on the test card. So that's another thing that you have to kind of put in your mind differently from previous years of testing, is that we're testing by card. Okay, where we have to test the students in each card compared to adding tests to a session and testing in that session. Okay, just kind of a different way of thinking about it and how you're going to kind of manage this. So let's go to Proctor groups and go to view. I need to get rid of a few of these. Second here. First time coming in here, you won't see anything here. This is, I can't, I'll explain that later, but you won't see anything here. I've been doing stuff in here, so I have one that I cannot delete. And the reason is because I had a fake student profile start in this test. Once a student starts in a group, then that group cannot be deleted. That group, Proctor group. Anyway, you won't see that until you start creating Proctor groups. They will start appearing down here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create group up here. And you want to make sure the name reflects the test that you're giving, because when a proctor logs in, it's going to display this so it identifies the test that they're going to be proctoring. So just to verify they're doing the right test. Grade 8 math, this was the card for, so underscore maybe the teacher's last name or something like that. Again, you'll kind of come up with the system for your naming of the different proctor groups. I'm going to select some information here. Okay, and now once you have all that that information in and selected, we can start adding students. So to the right of students, click the plus sign. We can add 10 per page. I have 40 students in this class, so I could go per page and add 10 at a time. Or I could add students individually. If you had a large class that you were splitting up into several groups, or they're going to go proctor, they're going to go to individual rooms with different proctors, then I could assign that number of various groups and adding them individually with the plus sign. But anyway, this particular class, I'm gonna have all of them in this one group. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 10 per page. I'm gonna add 10, go to page 2, add 10, go to page 3, add 10, go to page 4, add 10. Okay, once I have that all in there, I'm gonna close. And now you can see those students that I added. If there's something incorrect, you can delete them at that time or manage it that way. But anyway, when you're ready, you can click submit. And now you can see that test or that Proctor group that was created. Okay. So this one here, you can see it has 40 students in it. Now, what I'm going to do as a school coordinator is I'm going to provide this test code and Proctor password to the Proctor. Okay. On the previous screen on the card, let me go back really quick before I do the Proctor login with that code and password. Back on this screen for that card that I created that group for, if you wanted to create a file that has all the different groups in the Proctor or the test code and Proctor passwords for each one, we could do an export of the Proctor groups. That would be a file. If you do an export of that, you would retrieve it up in the downloads up here in your dashboard, your Atom dashboard. You go to downloads. Oh, wait. You got to change the file type to Proctor groups. Okay, you can see that one that I just downloaded, completed, downloaded. Obviously, it would be a file that you would open. Maybe. See where it ends up here. Let's see where that ended up. There it is. So again, you would have each group created and then kind of a document to keep track of all these test codes and Proctor passwords. Okay. But those could always be, again, those could always be retrieved. I don't have so many things open. Okay. Those could always be retrieved from this test card when you go to Proctor Groups View. Any Proctor group created populates here and then is assigned a test code and Proctor password. Every group created, no matter who creates the group. So now that they're going to advise the Proctor to go to the portal, well, they would know this from the training that they received prior to this, the Proctor training. They're going to go to the portal. And now this is a Proctor that does not have an account in any of the systems. So they're going to go to launch Atom, not sign in when you have access to systems. They're going to launch Atom. Okay. Once they click on that link, they're going to be brought to a test code and Proctor password where they put that information in. So this test code and Proctor password of the group that you created. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste that over to mine. Oh, it's the last letter. There we go. Okay, once they have that information in there, it's going to display the name that you called it, the Proctor group name. They'll say the Proctor will be, yep, that looks like the right test we're doing today. Confirm. Proctor first name. Okay, they'll put their information, their name in there. Click save, and now they're brought to the dashboard, the Proctor dashboard. In this scenario, if the Proctor was responsible for printing the test cards, they could click on print cards here and the test code would be printed on them or would be on them since those were students were added prior to the creation of the Proctor group. However, in my demo environment here, it doesn't show up right away, but I want you to envision that when you click on print card, it'll work for you. When you click on print cards, above the last name would be the test code of this code here, this B, whatever that is, B2BP7X would be printed on the test card or the test ticket, student test ticket. Okay. Also from this screen, if you obviously this is your group, right? That of those students that you assign to that group. So there's a toggle here, and this is explained in the manual a little better than I can. But if you look in the manual, it kind of explains. But if you click this toggle, there's a toggle view, if you will. Okay. If you click on that, you can see a list of the accommodations set for each student. Okay. Now you'll notice that this one has a kind of a period, meaning there's more to that. If I click on this toggle, the display, then it will display all of them. Okay, so it might kind of expand some of those rows and so on. But anyway, that'd be a nice little way to see all the accommodations assigned per student. And then, obviously reference that with your departments, make sure everything's correct. If you need to make edits in the accommodations for that student. But again, that was the printer or the proctor printing the test tickets after they start or after they enter the proctor password and test code for that. But again, the test code would be displayed here and going that way. But again, that could be done ahead of time too. So the school coordinator, right? After they created this group and add students, they should be able to go to this Proctor. There's another way to do it too, but if they go to Proctor in that call or that row, they could go there and print the cards from here also. Again, the test ID, which should be on there, test code. But again, those are, if you were going to do them ahead of time, probably go this route, print them all off for each group, and then distribute them to each proctor so they can get them to the students in that group when they're ready to start testing. Okay, and once they start coming in, or once they're start logging in and stuff, you'll have to make sure you click approve all sessions before they can start as the proctor. Once you click that, they can start testing. You'll see again, we'll go through a little bit of what you're going to kind of see in these different columns. But one of the things you do see as a proctor is if there is a setting, an accommodation setting, if you hover over it, you can see it display those. So if there's a student like, hey, I'm supposed to have this on my test, it's not showing up. You can verify that first of all, and if it doesn't show up there, you'd have to have that student log out. If they started the test, you probably have to have them make a request to have it restart. I'll show you where those are shortly, but just again, ensuring accommodations are set correctly at least 24 hours prior to testing is very important. Okay. Now, when a student comes back for the second time, let's say they're we're done with day one, they've logged out a test nav, we're ready to go on day two, we're ready to go. You as the proctor come back to the same process, launch Atom, type in the same test code, proctor password, be brought right back to this dashboard. It will have a prompt here under group actions to reseat all students. You want to make sure you complete that step before students start logging into the browser. Because if you do not, and they're logged in when you hit that button, it's going to force them to log in again. So to save a little bit of time and maybe you want to do it that way. Make sure you do it before they start logging in when it's day 2 or 3 or whatever. And if students come in late and they're logging in, they'll show up as actions as to reseat individually if they're not part of that starting group of different situations that may arise. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind. And again, that was all from the creation of the school coordinator, creating groups and pre-populating students ahead of time. Okay, I'm gonna close out a few windows. And so I get some coordination here. So the second option is to have the proctors create the groups or populate the groups, if you will. So now in that, I need to switch this back to my math one. There we go. So in that particular situation, the school coordinator will still come to the card for that test. And then again, this will have to be done for each test these groups created, okay? But again, they'll come to this. I'm using the same one just because that's what I have available in my demoing processes. But the school coordinator will still come to proctor groups and they will go to view. Same thing they did when they were creating the group. But instead of creating the group and adding students and all that stuff that I showed you in that first option, they will simply provide the proctor with this test code and this password from this area. Okay. So they're going to give that information to the proctor. The proctor again is going to go back to the portal. Just move this window over back to the portal. Go to launch Atom. They'll put this information from here in that you gave them as the coordinator. And instead of, click happy. Instead of it going to the dashboard like it did when we had the group already populated with students, when they click submit, it's going to prompt them to name this group. Okay. So I'm going to say for this instance, again, define or making sure it's clear what test this is, math 8, last name of teacher. I don't know, something that identifies what it is and kind of where it fits or whatever. And then I'm going to select some information here, school, the proctor's first name and last name. Okay. And their email. It's asking for an email because it's going to send them an email with the proctor test or the test code and proctor password. So then when they come back the next day, if they need to, if another session, they'll have it on record. So they can get back to that test code, because again, that test code is used for every attempt. It doesn't change. The test code for that test group, proctor group, does not change for each attempt. Once they put their information in, the email, it will send them an email. Like I said, if it's not showing up in your inbox as a proctor, check your junk or spam. It comes from a not so familiar address. So click on confirm, and the proctor will be brought to their dashboard. Okay. The proctor will display, we don't have any students yet, right? So we don't have any cards to print yet. So they will display the test code either on the screen or write it on the board, because they won't have any ID or codes yet, because that was part of the first option. They will put the test code in, launch your browser, put the test code in, put their SSID and last name in, and log into the test. And once they start doing that, they will populate in this area, which then creates the group. Another thing I wanted to mention is that if things are changing and they're not updating right away in your dashboard, if students are testing, that Johnny's on number 7 and it only says 5 and it hasn't updated in a while, you want to make sure you click refresh, or for good practice, make sure you have auto refresh every 5 minutes on, so it doesn't lag. In case it's lagging. Now that group that I just created as a proctor, I call that math8 underscore to zeal underscore. Back on the back on the school coordinator's test card for that test. Yeah, and I gotta change this. Let's go back. There we go. For those proctor groups, for that test card, if I go back there, there's that group that's just created by that proctor. So again, we don't have any students yet because no students have started logging in. But if the proctor lost that email or had the test code and password, they would have to ask the school coordinator to come here and retrieve it for them from here. Okay. So the coordinator gave the proctor this code and password from that test card. Proctor went in, created the group, went into their dashboard, and we're able to start having students log in, and they will populate that group and create that group from those logins as they come in. That was option 2. Okay, the last option. One more thing before I go on to the next option is back under group creation, there is an upload group. So if you click on the upload, you can download a template. And it will have some different fields that will be pre-populated for you, but you can also, fill in the name and different columns that and assign them that way. So you can add students by bulk with that template and create these groups. There's more information on these steps, and then kind of, if you have issues with that, don't hesitate to kind of reach out if you have questions on that. But if you do this and you click on download template, let's say I do that. If I go to, you're going to find that download in template history. Just kind of a side note. And you can decide what to do with it from that template history screen. So I'm going to say download it. Got it. Open file. Wherever that ended up on my computer, I'll drag it over there if I can. There it is. Yay. So that's where you would see the information, and then you can assign a group name with that column and assign them by bulk that way. Proctor name, Proctor group name. Again, if you have questions on that, you can always reach out for more information. That's if you choose to do it that way. Okay, I'm gonna close that out, and these other ones I have open. For this last option for proctoring a test, I need to log in differently. So just give me a few seconds here. I'm gonna log in as a teacher, okay? Starting to see double for all these letters. There we go. Got it. Login as a teacher. And I mentioned this briefly. It's in the, it's kind of mentioned in the TAM a little bit, but you as a coordinator or administrator can log in as other users. So if you noticed when I searched for this user role, I was pulling up a teacher that I can use to demo this dashboard and stuff. Over under actions, you'll see log in as. So you can actually or you can actually log in. So an example of how to use that, an effective way you could use that is if you have a teacher in the classroom that's calling you in your office, and they're working through something. They're like, hey, this is missing in my dashboard, and they're trying to explain what it is instead of having to play charades. You can log in as that user and see exactly what they're saying, seeing. Okay, just something to keep in mind if you ever experience those types of troubleshooting. I'm going to log in as this teacher. Okay, and again, if it's a grade 5 teacher, they would see grade 5 math, grade 5 reading, grade 5 writing. Well, the writing again is working its way up. But anyway, this is kind of random because I'm working with some demo stuff here. I'm going to choose this grade 5 math card. As you notice with the teacher dashboard, looks quite different than the school coordinator or district administrator. They just have their classes. They'll see their classes, and they'll also see student performance. That is where they will retrieve the reports when they start coming in of the students in their classroom. Okay. But the classes, they'll simply select one of the tests, assessments, summative assessments. And once they get to kind of a point where they see their roster here, they'll see some different information, but under view over by view here, we want to switch from roster view to administration view. Okay. And being this is not exactly like it'll appear with the summatives, it might look a little bit different as far as what you have to select on this screen. But anyway, either way, you will end up at a screen that will have the test. Obviously, this is not exact reflecting the summative, but it will have a similar screen to this. But it'll say summative, grade 5 math, summative, all that stuff. But anyway, once you get to a screen that has, you'll see the roster and you'll see progress not started, submitted, so you can have kind of a preview of that. But anyway, to proctor the test through your teacher dashboard, you simply go up to the little clipboard up top here where it says Proctor when you hover over it. Click on Proctor, and you're brought automatically to a dashboard in which you will give students this test code right on the board or display it on your screen. And you can, again, I'm just expanding it to make it full screen from right here under actions. They type it in, SSID, last name, start populating here as they're logging in. And if you noticed, I was unable to name that group. So by default, when a teacher administers the proctors the test through their dashboard, it just by default creates the group as that test name. So it'll be something on the summatives, it'll say grade 5 math summative or something like that. But again, it didn't give me, it just names it that by default. So then again, this group that was created back in the, if they, or next time they come, obviously they would come to their dashboard. Or for the first time, they would have to approve, just like any other session. Next time they come back, click on the card again, go there, open this dashboard again, reseat students, have them log in, and then they would just maintain this through their dashboard. Okay, so all those different caveats with each one of those group creations is kind of how you will see things on, obviously how you administer this will make a determination on how you decide to do this. If you simply have teachers administering it to their students, this would be a pretty easy way to do that. Obviously, if you have to split groups up and all those different types of things, you might want to go with the creation ahead of time or have the proctors take care of it themselves with students logging in. Again, all those different options, but I have had several questions. I've noticed, I haven't read the chat in a while, but I've had several questions on how do you go about managing several test cards at one time. Let's say you're doing a makeup day and you have a third grader taking math, you have a fifth grader taking the reading. The answer I have for you is you will have to have each Proctor dashboard open in a separate window. So I'd have to go to each test code and Proctor password, log in to get that dashboard open, and then have it open in various tabs, each one. Or you could, let's say you had a class of, I'm trying to think quick, the class of, I heard this morning somebody say they have a class of 300 and some, which you're going to split them into several groups and have them proctor individually. Or if they are, instead of doing it that way, you could add all students in that class to one group, one proctor group, and then excuse me, share that same test code and proctor password with all the proctors. They can all have the same dashboard open for a test code. But the drawback with that is that all the students would show up down here, no matter which ones were, assigned to each room. So it would take some work, or it would take some kind of going back and forth, scrolling back and forth. There will be obviously there'd be several pages of students here, but the ones that are in your room, you would have to kind of look and throughout those lists. But again, I've heard schools doing that way that it's worked for. Also, heard schools doing it the other way where they have different browser tabs open for each session or for each test card. That's that difference of the adding tests to a session prior or compared to this way of doing it per test card on each grade level in each subject. Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else with proctor group creation. Right now, I don't think so. I'm going to go into some other functions within Atom. Before I do that though, I need to log out of this demo teacher account. I need to go back to my Launchpad dashboard. And I'm going to go back to the Atom LTR system. Sign in again. There we go. Okay. So some other function tasks you should be aware of that you will need to kind of look through or access will be some rostering functions, which you can look up users. So again, if you're curious as to, what users are in your area, I'm just going to go to a random one here of my fake data, select a role. Coordinators, again, you can see all of those other roles at your level and below. So school coordinators can see all other school coordinators and teachers. District administrator can see school coordinators, teachers, and other district administrators. So you can see I got one. So if, tells you a list of those or whatever. And then change that search. I'm going to change it to teacher so you can look and see what teachers are that organization. Just filtering out some of that information. But on the student end of things, role of student. So instead of selecting a role of a user, I'm going to select role student. Okay, and you can see I have kind of all of them here. I'm going to filter this by grade. I'm going to say third grade. Okay, so I filtered it by grade. And now let's say what you're looking to do is make accommodation edits for a student. Because you notice that some wasn't set correctly or it wasn't set, didn't process with the upload. Speaking of that, an upload did take place statewide from TyNet on the 5th of February. The data was pulled on the 2nd. So if there were IEPs that were in TyNet prior to the 2nd, you should see those tools, accommodation settings show up in that student profile. But I'm going to go to one of these student profiles. So over on the right here of the student, where that student is, I'm going to click on edit. Okay, you'll be brought to information for history, demographics, information, but up here it says accommodations is where I want to be. This particular student doesn't have any, so I'm going to use a scenario as I need to set this because maybe this IEP was written after the 5th or 2nd. So I need to go manually set these. There won't be another statewide upload. So if you had newly added IEPs, or if it's something you had to add from a 504, you would have to do it this way. So go to edit, set a view, find a specific setting. So when you're scrolling through this, you'll see a couple columns with interim first, but the summative will be on the right here, the settings for the summative tests. So let's say, for example, I need to, the student has an accommodation of a paper test. Click on that. For math, maybe it's just math. I'm just kind of making some changes so you can see what it looks like. And then also on the passages for items and passages for the text speech on the reading. If I do make a change and it is a documented accommodation that has to be written in a plan, it will notify you that the selection is an accommodation and students should have a document plan allowing it before you make that confirmation. So kind of make sure you have all your documents in a row before you start making these changes. Make sure everything is accounted for. So making those edits, if you see if you see boxes that are like grayed out, won't let you make a change. Those are universal tools. All students have access to those. You don't need to change anything in those. And also some other ones, just different settings. I'll say the passages too is another one that I'm gonna set for this student because it's in their IEP. I'm saying. Okay, so once you have those updates, you want to make sure you hit save. And now under that view where it first was before I made those edits, you'll see those accommodations. Okay. But again, you want to make sure these are kind of updated, at least 24 hours prior to testing. Another way to look at these accommodations, I showed you the way from the print student testing tickets view. But another way to kind of look at all of those settings, including you tools and supports and all that stuff. If I go, so right now I'm in student view, just like I was when I went and made those combination edits for that student. I'm going to go, I can either make individual selections, or let's say I'm just doing a report of all students and the accommodations that they have set. So I'm going to say select all. This is all students in third grade right now because I have it filtered to third grade student. So I have all of them selected. You can see all third graders, right? And I'm going to go to this little 3-dot ellipse. I'm going to go to student accommodation upload. So you're not necessarily uploading anything. You'll find that this document will kind of create a report of, you know, each student's settings and accommodation settings. But once we click on create template, okay, we'll get a message that it has been created. And if we go to within that same area where you did the template upload, you click on this at the top of the screen, template history. Once you click on that, you'll see the document that you just kind of upload. What you did is you uploaded it to your file center and your download kind of template history section. Once you look at the one that you just, you can see that's the one at 247 there, and just uploaded it. You want to click the download button to download to a template or a Word Excel file. You can open that and you'll have a giant spreadsheet of each student. And again, my student stuff is hard to look at, but anyway, pretend like these are student names over here, and then all of the different settings. Each one specifically. Again, these are universal tools, so it says NA, so you don't have to worry about anything there. But again, it reports all of them. Okay, so again, another way to look at it, but you could also, if it was a combination specific, you could do it from that print test tickets also screen. Okay, I'm going to go back to, as soon as I can close these, close that. Okay, so that was kind of a look at accommodations, how to set those, how to look at accommodations of students in that different file. Let me see here. So if there is, like I had mentioned before, briefly in the kind of intro slides there, is that if there is an exemption, if a student does have an exemption, you can enter those at any time. I'm going to show you where those can be entered. Under back in the test management administrations area, where we were in the test cards, right? Go back to that math one I was in. So I'm going to say, I know the student has an alternate assessment in their IEP, so I'm going to go make this setting right now so I don't have to worry about it later. So I'm going to students this time instead of Proctor groups. I'm going to students, view. Okay, and so you have your student roster of all the students in this class. You can go over to actions in the very right column, and we'll have apply accountability code. Click that, drop down, and we'll have those first 5. You won't see the last 2. You'll see alternate assessment through parental directive. You'll select one of those, say other, apply. So now that will show up in that code column for that student profile. It will also, you'll have to go to each test card for that student and set it. It just doesn't carry over to the other tests they have to take. So you have to go to each test card and do this separately for each test card to apply the code. So obviously the student, wouldn't be able to test or anything if that code was applied, if they accidentally were added to a group or something like that. But obviously those students would probably go to a separate area or something, work on something else while there's a testing. They had a certain participation code. Okay, so that was the non-participation codes. If there are irregularities in the testing, or if there were irregularities that happened during testing, these are all in the manual, explains what they are, what can happen if it's disrupted, the network shuts down, causes chaos, and you have to have these tests reset. There's a certain process for that request. So it has to be done by a school coordinator or district administrator. Up on the top here in their dashboard, in their Atom dashboard, there's a megaphone type thing up here, icon. If they click on that, click on create new request. This would be a session request. All of them will be actually session request. Student first name, last name, ID, student ID, test session name, district school, and instructions. Again, in the manual, it will tell you the different scenarios and how to kind of define those, what to write in this instructions area. But again, describe what it is you need. I need this test reset because the student was logged on the browser, or they started with the wrong accommodations, stuff like that. Click once you have that information in there, click submit. Kara is at DPI is usually watching these very closely, but I say a maximum of 24-hour turnaround. But once they do fix that or allow that to happen, you would get a little, it would say like a little orange dot, I think, that would represent new message. And then you would open that and you would see that it was completed. However, if it was completed kind of between the hour, so let's say Kara fixed it at 1:20 of that or whatever, it would not reflect in that student's, it wouldn't reset that test until the top of the hour. So 2 o'clock is when they would be able to log back in and continue or have their test restarted and all that stuff. Just something to keep in mind on specifics for those requests. Okay. Over on the one last thing is the progress reports within the Atom system. So again, if I'm looking for a report of students that have not started, some ones that are done, in progress, all those different statuses of the tests of the students. If I go to reporting on the left here, in my school coordinator or district admin dashboard, those are the two that would have access to doing all this stuff I'm showing you. If I go to progress, I'm going to make a couple selections here. Summative. Nope. Not, or wait, is that the right one? Yep. Yeah, PV. Okay. Yep, that's right. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is a report of kind of a list of the students and if they've started, if they've submitted, all those different statuses. So I'm going to select one of these tests. And again, this will look different with summative or the different options you have to select when it starts and everything. When the summative start window opens and students start testing. Once you click on that, you're going to export that report. And it will will export it to a file, Excel file. And once you click on open file, something's going to happen. There it is. So again, it's going to show you the different status. Expand these. Okay, so and if the scores were available, it would have information in that column. But again, gonna have progress, status, you'll say not started, submitted. Well, you'll see other ones too if they're in. Those are the only two I have here, but again, you gotta report the different ones. So just a way to look at that from a kind of a whole by student approach. There's some other reports you can do in there, but again, you'll find all that more information on all of these in the TAM if you wanted to be more specific on those. Okay, I think I'm done for now in the Atom system as far as what I'm going to demo. I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure I covered everything. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I'll have it over there in just a second. So these are the particular, these are the specific items I kind of went through in the task in the Atom system. Okay, so, and again, some of that stuff is more, a little more specific in the test administration manual about, what types of requests there are with those test irregularities and accommodations and so on. So just be aware that you can find all more specific in the test administration manual. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I am away on, again, these screenshots from 51 to wherever it ends up are all meant for you for that visual of each group creation process. There's that email that the proctor will receive when they create the proctor group. That's just a sample of the email. Again, this is the address it comes from, so it could end up in that junk or spam email if it's flagging that to that folder. Again, they want to keep that for record. And then the last option, the teacher going in and creating the proctor group. Hey, I'm on 77, the proctor dashboard. Just, we've been looking at a few things in here as we've been creating those groups and opening this dashboard, but more specifically of the different types of information you'll have in each of the areas as testing is happening. These next two slides identify what will happen or what you should see in those different columns, situations that could come up. Again, you'll see progress, start time, status, needs attention, not starting, progress submitted, receded, exited. All that stuff will start showing up as students start testing. You'll have to pay attention to those different processes. Remember those things I had mentioned about the reseeding and starting them on the first day, approving sessions. Also, you'll see some progress in there as they're progressing per item. It'll say, 3 out of 37 or however many on the test, where they're at as they're going. There will be that column of accommodation. If there are some set for that student, you hover over it as the proctor, it'll display it. I believe I showed you that. And also, if there is a code that was a non-participation code that was entered for a student, they would also see that in the proctor dashboard if that student ended up in that group. Again, they wouldn't be able to start testing anyway if they had that code by mistake, if they had that code. Actions, you'll see all kinds of different things interrupted. If there is something that needs to be restarted, like I said, they have to notify a school coordinator or district administrator, whoever's running that operation, and notify them to make that request. Okay. The more specific on, I've been talking about these a little bit, but some more specifics on the features, supports, accommodations. These are all on those 5-6 pages in the manual, 26-31. Again, just kind of taking into consideration that some will be embedded, which are built into the tests, and the non-embedded will be the non-digital locally provided type tools. The universal features, again, those will be available to all. Again, the student readiness tool will be a great way, a really great way for them to go in and experience these before they dive into the test. So they're more fluid in using these tools when they take the summative test. But anyway, these are the ones they will experience, the embedded universal features. Again, it'll just depend on what type of question it is, and what they have access to. Answer eliminator, they can cross out certain answers and as they're narrowing down the correct answer, masking, highlighting, line reader masking, where it kind of grays out the rest of the screen and you can focus line by line, on the math and science. Uh, Calculators will be available in some cases on screen, some won't. Just things to just be aware of and where those tools will be, how to use them. Is that SRT tool, student readiness tool, will help with that. The breaks obviously aren't built in. There's no point where it will say, everybody take a break now. You'll have to decide that as a school, as a proctor, on what appropriate times are for breaking every, so many minutes or whatever, half hour, whatever it is you come up with. If you do take a break, however, you want to make sure that the students' devices aren't open, displaying an answer or something that would, if another student saw it, it would give them an answer or something like that. Make sure there isn't like a universal pause button from the proctor. So it doesn't necessarily happen that way where it would gray out the screens. So you need to make sure either students are covering their screens with a piece of paper, or if they are using laptops, closing it to a point where, it's not shut off yet, but it's not displaying anything either. They could bring their devices up to the proctor's desk to make sure nobody's viewing those screens. Just anything that you kind of come up with on how to handle that. You could have them log off and log back in, but again, that's a time thing too. Again, just so they're not displaying any answers on the screen. There is that 20-minute timeout logout feature where if a student's device does remain idle for more than 20 minutes, it will log them out automatically of the TestNav application. It will not warn them that it's going to log out. It just does it at that 20-minute mark. So be aware of that. So they would have to log back in and be reseated after, if that was to happen. Also, scratch paper needs to be supplied to students in case they need to work out a problem or to write some ideas down, stuff like that. Just make sure it is destroyed and so on after each test session. And again, test time doesn't apply so as many times as they need, sessions as they need. The features, the supports, designated supports, if they're receiving any type of these additional support in the classroom, it should mirror, we should have it some kind of feature that we can help, or not help, but supply them with, support them on the test with. These are not necessarily documented. These are, again, the team, your district teams, your teachers, your students best and kind of how they learn best and the supports they need to be successful in learning. But some of the embedded ones that you will see are the Spanish language translation for the math and science, and the additional Zoom up to 200% for maybe vision impaired students on all the different tests. Non-embedded, you're going to find separate. If it's a pull-out student, they're taking in a different setting, stuff like that. Noise filter, noise buffers, just anything that, again, they're receiving those supports in classroom. We want to make sure we provide them with something similar on the test. The documented piece, the IEP, again, that upload information is there. That will be the only one that will happen. So if you had new IEPs created after that time, you want to make sure those are manually set in the accommodations for those students. The embedded ones you will see are you obviously having to make sure that these are part of the IEP, but it would be the items and passages or both on the reading test. Non-embedded would be the Braille, human reader, large print, paper print, all those types of non-embedded locally provided accommodations. The speech to text, if you have a student that has the combination of dictation where they talk and it types out what they're saying, there is a tool that's not necessarily embedded in the test. It's an extension to the test itself. So it's kind of a different toolbar that will be present, but it has a little bit of a different functionality than it would if it was built into the test. There's a few screenshots of what it looks like, and there's two options of the type of speech to text tool you select to use. There's some screenshots in the appendix of the test administration manual that show it, but we're working on some more detail on the process of turning it on, making sure it's working, and all that good stuff before students start logging in. So we'll be updating you soon about more specifics on how that extension functions for the speech to text feature. Again, you want to make sure accommodations are set 24 hours prior to testing. So kind of to wrap up things here and kind of open up for questions at the end here and so on, but putting it all together, just making sure leading up to testing day, all of these different pieces have been completed. You have all these resources together, and all of your proctors have what they need to start proctoring the different tests. Making sure your network is good to go. Oh, that's another thing I will quickly show you is where that app check is and the network check is. So I'm going to close out of this quickly, or not quickly. I'm going to pull it over that shared screen in just a second here after it loads. So in the first screen, or when the student opens up the TestNav application for the first time, they've never logged in. For the first time, it's going to look similar to, and this shows this in the documents in the test administration manual also. They will have to make a selection one time. So first time they log in, they want to make sure they select North Dakota. So when they do that the first time, they won't have to do it again the next time they come back. But just something to keep in mind. So you'll see here that, audio test, microphone test, test code. That's the first thing they'll do. But the app check is actually up in a little drop-down box up on the top right here. If I click on that and I click app check, and run that app check. Again, it's just a few seconds. You'll see it's running it on my end. It doesn't show it over there because you can't test with dual displays. It's running the app check on my device. But anyway, it came back good. So kiosk mode pass, connectivity, test net pass. So I know that app is ready to go on that device. The other option you had besides app check was the network check. So don't hesitate if you are a proctor coordinator and you're kind of want to do these things on your own. You can go ahead and it's not going to hurt anything for you to install this TestNav app on your own device to run these checks and so on, just to get used to it. But the network check is another one that you might want to take a look at. If you're going to be testing in the computer lab at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, let's say, there might be a lot of streaming or whatever a lot of network traffic during that time and you're concerned about it. So let's say at 1 o'clock you go into the lab and you go, I'm going to be testing 45 students in here. I start a diagnostic test. It should give you a result based on the current load on your system. So it's looking at current load and if it can support that number of devices testing at that time. Okay. So again, some nice features there for some things to double check, and especially running that app check prior to students logging in. Okay. a quick view of that. Coming back to kind of leading up to testing, like I said, all those different processes. Day of, obviously, you have a lot of different pieces in place, making sure proctors are, able to log into the dashboard, going into Atom, proctoring the test, materials, scratch paper, all that stuff being distributed. Scripts, the test directions, like I said, are on the manual on 37 to 54 of those pages. Scripted directions on all the different tests of what the proctor should be saying to set things up and so on. Hey, if there's any visual aids in the room, if there's like an example of a math problem or a something related to science that might help them, definitions or anything that might help them, is covered up in the classroom so they don't have any of those access to that to look at those. Just all those different pieces that are happening on test day setup. The last few charts here is just kind of an overview of all the different processes and the phase of testing and kind of who is doing what at those different times and what they should be printing test tickets, managing accommodations, all those different pieces. So if you wanted to kind of use this as a guide and kind of check things off as you're going and making sure it's all taken care of, this would be kind of a reference to have. Again, this is in the TAM also. Like I had mentioned before, the appendix of the test administration manual is a great resource. I'm going to pull it over. I think, there we go. On the portal, you go to the portal and you go to administration resources to summative resources is where you'll find that main guide. Okay, the table of contents is what I was trying to find there. I found it. In the appendix A through O. Okay, so all of those different pieces of the appendix have all of these little processes I've been showing you along with more stuff. So let's say, again, if you want to run that app check, you would find it more, details on Appendix B. If you wanted to learn about the different creating proctor group options, you would go to this Appendix D. Okay, so all of these processes, these are all those like quick little reference guides in the appendix. That speech text that I mentioned that we're still working on a little bit, this is kind of what it's going to look like with the select an extension, the student, making sure there'll be like a toolbar, like I said. But again, when this is completed and how, by who is kind of what we're looking at more detail and which one, there's two options, like I said. So again, we'll have more information on updating the information in here. We have more. So again, that's a great reference to look at if you want, just to have as a guide on the side when you're getting things ready and you just need that reference point of having this near you or pulled up on your screen for reference. Okay, so that was 99. Let me go back to this. Last one is the code copy of prompt. Again, if there's a certain percentage of text that is copied and pasted from the prompt in a writing question, there will be an error code that they will the student will receive in the scoring, which will not allow an ELA score to be compiled. We will have more information for you on that exact percentage soon.